Average value. What is the average value of y equals square root of cosine of x on the interval 0 to pi over 2? Okay, so look at your unit circle. You have cosine of 0, pi over 2, and it's going to go from 1 to 0. So look at it kind of like this. It'll be something kind of sort of like this. It's going to look kind of like cosine of x, but a little bit different because it's square rooted. It'll probably actually be a little bit bigger. So cosine of x will probably be more like, that's terrible. Will be less because since you're going between 1 and 0, when you square root a number less than 1, the number actually gets bigger. So the idea here is you're going to probably have to use your calculator. My recommendation is try and not use your calculator whenever possible, because every time you use your calculator, it's going to take time just to enter numbers in. Plus, every time you enter numbers in, there's a chance that you're going to enter them in wrong. And if you can avoid that, you're generally better off. But it looks like it's going to be unavoidable here. Okay, so we're going to get a value. What is the average value? So we know the value is going to be less than 1 because the highest value is 1. The final value is 0. Probably not going to be negative. So we're left with 1/2 and 0.763. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to take the integral from 0 to 1 and then divide it by our length, which is pi over 2, to find the average value. And if we look at this, y equals cosine of x to the 1/2. There really isn't an easy way to do this integral. Integral dx, because we want to find the area under the curve. So we're going to find the area under the curve and then divide by pi over 2 because that's the length. Yep, we're just going to plug it in the calculator. Alright, take our calculator. Y equals, probably should make sure it's in the right mode. Radians, yep. Functions, yep. Okay, so we'll do parentheses cosine of x to the 0.5. And then we will set the window. X min will be 0. Pi over 2 will be, so 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So 2, we'll say 2. Y min will be 0. And I'll say negative 1. Negative 1 to 1. And graph. Boom, boom, boom. Yep. Oh, so slow. So slow. And we know that of the square root of the cosine of pi over 2 will be 0. Because cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Square root that, we also get 0. So now we're going to calculate. Second, calculate. And you can see that it kind of sort of abruptly ended. And the reason that was it tried to take the cosine of a negative number. So once cosine gets past once it gets past pi over 2, you start getting negative values, which you don't want. Because, then you start taking the square root of a negative number, world ends, imaginary numbers, etc., etc., etc. Oh, you are so slow, calculator. Click, click. See, this is why I dislike the use of calculators. So we're going to get a number here. I want to make sure I don't go past pi over 2. So maybe back 1. It's probably good there. Maybe. Enter. Boom. Do a bunch of Riemann sums. Zip. 1.19. 1.19. Okay, so that's the area under this curve right here. Aha, we even have the answer, 1.19 there. But we know that's not correct because we're looking for average value. So we'll do 1.19 probably 8. That's probably what it really means. Because I underplayed it a little bit because I wanted to make sure that I didn't accidentally get past where the graph existed. We'll divide by pi over 2. So we'll take 1.198 times 2 divided by pi. So we'll get our calculator. Clear. 1.198 times 2 divided by 3.1415. And we get... Whoop! Ah, I missed it. Okay, go back. 0.763. 0.763, which is this one right there. So that is the answer. So backtrack real quick. You have about 3 minutes to do these kind of problems. When you have a calculator problem, you usually get about 3 minutes, which we probably made it almost under that. So what is the average value of y equals square root of cosine of x? So the first thing is, all right, we want to graph this out. To graph this out, we look at the first value, we look at the last value, 1 to 0. And that's going to kind of give us our limit of maximum and minimum. And looking at just that, we were able to narrow it down to 2 possible values, which you only need about 60% on the AP test to get a 5. You might even be able to pass with 50%. By pass, I mean a 4. So just at that point, we're doing pretty good. And that takes like seconds. So then we are like, all right, we're going to find the area under this curve. So we do our calculator. We put in the equation, y equals square root of cosine of x. Integrate it, and that gives us the area under the curve. And we got a bigger number, 1.198, which was the area. And from there, we then had to divide it by how far we took. Since we're looking for the average value, I had to divide by the length, which is pi over 2. So start at 0 and at pi over 2. That length is pi over 2. Well, pi over 2 minus 0. And then when we do that, we get the answer of 0.763 as the average value. Another way to think of this is you have your equation here. This is square root of cosine of x. And if you squish it down to make it a rectangle, what would be the height of this rectangle? And the answer to that is 0.763. Okay, that is how you find the average value of a function, specifically a function where you need to use your calculator to find the integral.